In my first appointment, I was serving out in the desert, and I had often participated in summer camp and had a number of contacts across the conference. And one of them was serving an hour and a half or 2 hours away, and they were doing a youth lock-in, and he invited me to come and be the guest preacher. And so I was driving from the desert up to more desert, because that's how Southern California is. And on the way, as you 2-lane highway, and you'd accelerate and then slow down, and then a semi, and you'd slow down and you'd accelerate, just like highway driving is. But at some point I couldn't accelerate more. It was about 40 miles an hour was all my car was willing to do, and I slowed and I accelerated some more, and it just wouldn't kick over into the next gear. And so I pulled off at a gas station, and I got some transmission fluid. I thought maybe that was the issue, and so I put it in. It really didn't make a difference. It seemed to be pretty drivable, but I just couldn't go over 40 miles an hour. So I called my friend and let him know I would be running late, or I was running late, and I would get there when I could. And so I drove the rest of the way and parked it overnight, for it was a lock-in, and I was doing this preaching thing, and my mentor happened to live in the neighboring town. So I had called him, and he, while a pastor, was also a pilot driver for Nissan. And I knew that, and so I said, hey Jim, could you just take a look at my car and let me know if you think you know what you can do with it, or what's going on, or what to do. So he very gently came on the next morning and test drove it and said, I think it's your transmission. I think you need to take it to a shop. And so I did. And after we dropped it off, we went out to breakfast and we were talking, and he said, it can be pretty expensive. This is pretty common with your type of car. And so at this mileage, so you may want to think about trading it in. And, I'd really recommend that you get a Nissan. Well, now he's a Nissan pilot driver, so that was sort of an obvious thing. And I said, I don't know, Jim, I'm really kind of a Honda girl. We had Hondas. Those were the 4-door cars that my siblings and I had driven during high school and I in college. And he's like, well, see, the thing is that Nissan really has to compete with Honda, and so they've upped their game so that they're really competitive in the market. I'm like, I don't know, Jim, really, I think I'm a Honda girl. And he says, here's the other thing, Debbie, is Nissan uses the Honda engine in their vehicles, but they're a lot more affordable. And I'm like, Jim, we've just always had Hondas, and I think I'm a Honda girl. And he was like, okay, well, I guess you better look for a Honda. Now, the irony was that before seminary, I had purchased a used vehicle, which was a Ford. That was the one that was in the shop, which is nothing to say about Ford, but just that's what it was, that I was so insistent. No, I've got to be a Honda. I'm a Honda. But here I was driving a Ford. I couldn't even sort of see the forest for the trees in that distinction. Now, that's sort of a far afield kind of example, but sometimes I think we view change in the church kind of like that. We, in our heads, are always one type. Right? I'm a Honda girl. I'm a traditional service person. I'm a modern service person. I'm a small group person. I'm a fellowship only person. I'm a this, we categorize ourselves. That's what humans do. And in the church, we are prone to that as well. And so we think of ourselves in a particular way. And then when a new alternative is presented, we often argue with, no, I don't do that because I always do this. No, I don't do that. I always do this. Sometimes not even realizing the inherent irony in our argument, that while we were this for a time and we aren't quite here, we actually had to shift over here, and we're in this camp, not this camp, and maybe we're more willing to change than we thought. Maybe we were just less aware of it, maybe we weren't confronted with it in the same way. But lots of things are changing in the church these days, not just our church, but the church universal, the denominational church, the global church. COVID did a number on every level of every institution, and we are not exempt. Things are changing. We have different norms, different expectations, different priorities, and we are working to adapt in those. And some of us have ourselves very clearly in one category, even if we haven't been operating there for a very long time. And so it may be that we as the church present an alternative, a new thing, and you go, no, I can't do that because I'm always here. We might have to do a little bit of self-reflection and go, but are we? Have we always and only been here, or were we also here for a time and here for a time and there for a time? And it wouldn't necessarily be the worst case scenario if we tried that other thing. I'm, no longer one category or the other. I've driven and owned a Ford and a Nissan and a Honda and a Chevy and a Dodge. The list just keeps on going, right? Because I'm adaptable. Sometimes by choice, sometimes by force. But it's doable, even if we're resistant at first. Take care, friends.